Welcome, everybody. We are so happy that you're joining us here today for our second intermission webinar. We are so excited to have Travis Shakespeare with us today. When we were talking to him, meeting him, he said to us, "You don't know what you don't know." And what I realized was it gives us all permission to start right where we are today. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start right here with Travis. We have a Q&A at the end, so stay tuned. Travis is going to talk for about 20 minutes or so. Travis, take it away.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy that you've joined. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, so I hope you get a lot out of it. I want to talk to you and begin opening a conversation today around financial well-being. Money is a topic that is difficult for a lot of us. It's something that impacts all of us differently, and it impacts us depending on the way our situation and life is structured. So it's a little bit of a complicated subject, but let's dive in. First of all, why should you listen to me? I mean, I'm just some other guy named Shakespeare. We're supposed to be related, by the way, to his brother. That question often comes up. But I have been on a long and bumpy road to financial well-being myself for many, many years. I started out the child of a school teacher. I grew up with my sister and my mom and my dad, just four of us, but on a school teacher's salary. So we didn't have a lot of money coming out of the gate. And I always just imagined that someday the floodgates would open and money would rain down upon me and I would be wealthy, and that would just be that. What I didn't realize was that that doesn't happen for the vast majority of us. But what can happen is a systematic understanding of the way that money works in our lives and how to deploy it in best practices that can allow us to build wealth no matter what income level we're working with. For me personally, I would say I was financially illiterate up until I was about 40 years old. I was an actor for many years, an aspiring actor, so I got to be really, really good at being a poor, struggling artist. And later in my 30s, began to do some work in unscripted reality TV. That ended up becoming a career for me, culminating in me working for BBC Studios in Los Angeles, where we produced shows like Dancing with the Stars and Life Below Zero. But along the way, around when I was about 40 years old, my father unfortunately passed away from ALS, and I had this wake-up call where I started taking a really deeper look at my financial situation, and I realized that I was in a lot of trouble. I was still $40,000 in student loan debt with a 9% interest rate, and I had about $10,000 in credit card debt. And for the first time in my life, I ran a retirement calculator, which you can see online, and I realized that if I didn't get my stuff together, I was probably going to be eating cat food in my old age. So that's where I got my kick in the butt. And for the next 10 years, I studied financial literacy and ended up making a documentary called Playing with Fire, which is about this very topic. So what is financial well-being in general? Well, it's the sense of you not having to panic every single time something new comes in the door, a new bill, your water heater blows out, your kid, God forbid, breaks an arm and you are sacked with a bunch of financial healthcare bills. It's a sense of ease, first of all. And how do you do that? Well, it begins with having a clear plan that supports the things that matter the most in your life. And if you have a clear plan set up, that will start to begin to bring a feeling of control around your finances, rather than this feeling like that you're in a puppet in somebody else's play, which I remember very much like feeling that way, that like I could never get my stuff together. I never understood where I was going with money. It always just kept falling through my fingers. And that can be really, really frustrating, but there's a lot of hope. It doesn't have to be like that. I wanted to just stop for a minute and just get a sense of where you guys are at and do a quick poll and just ask you, just based on what I've said here so far, what do you think the things are that prevent us from having financial well-being? Is it not having a budget? Is it carrying high interest debt? Not investing? maybe all of the above? What would you say? All of the above is the winner by 67%. That is correct. These are all things that will prevent us from achieving financial well-being. So well done. The other thing that prevents us from achieving financial well-being is that money is a very emotional topic for most of us. It's the number one cause of divorce in America. It creates an incredible amount of stress in our lives, especially when we don't understand how it works. It's tied in with our sense of self-worth. We're constantly trying to keep up with the Joneses. We think that if we don't have money, we're bad. If we have a lot of money, then we're amazing. Of course, we know story after story of people who do have lots of money who do not feel amazing despite that. Money is idolized in our culture. It's everywhere you go, every advertisement, every television show. You can't get on the bus without seeing pictures about this, telling you that you need to have more money and that spending money is the way to happiness and to curing all of your ills. In this culture, we're basically educated to be consumers rather than owner investors of our own financial lives. And I'll get into that a little more deeply. But before I do that, how do you find financial well-being? First of all, I want you guys to start thinking about money not as something that's going to get you something else, but that is as a tool in your life. Money is just a tool. It's a tool that allows us to focus on our top values. And when we focus on our top values, we come into alignment emotionally with what's most important to us. And that is the guiding principle from which we'll begin to understand how to use the tool of the money that we do acquire in our lives. We find financial well-being, like with health, by avoiding what harms us. And what harms us the most when it comes to money? Well, debt is a big one. Uncalculated debt can really just put us under and sink the ship. There's also the issue of using money in ways that harm us, like by deploying it for things that you don't really value in your life. It doesn't seem like that's harming you, but in the long run, as you'll see, it is. And last, finding financial well-being really is about becoming a creator of wealth rather than just somebody who spends. Going from a consumer-based mentality to going to an owner-based mentality, or as I call it, a CEO. You are going to be encouraged through this program to become the CEO of your own financial life. It's a really important shift in mindset. So I'm just going to repeat that. I want you to consider going from consumer to owner. A consumer just uses money to get things. An owner gets money and puts it to work so that they can create more wealth for themselves. And now more than ever, this is easier to do as individuals. Consumers are people that just, I love this picture of this woman with the Doritos because it captures the feeling so perfectly of the way we feel when we're just mindlessly consuming. It just feels so good because we get this little dopamine hit every time we spend money. But as you've probably already discovered in your life, if you just start throwing money out the window just to get that dopamine hit, you're not getting anywhere in your financial life. What you're doing is you're riding the hedonic treadmill. Hedonic means pleasure. So the advertisers and makers of goods have found out really easily that if they keep giving us this little hit, like rats getting cheese in a maze, you'll keep going back for more and they'll keep getting more and more of your money. This creates a lack of control over the river of financial inflows and outflows in your life. I like to think of money like water. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is direct the river of money that comes into your life into a reservoir that you can then in a very calculated way deploy into different areas of your life as you need it. One more quick poll here. Where do you think you can make the biggest gains cutting back on consumption in your life? If you were to shift from a consumer mindset to an owner mindset, where would you be able to make the biggest gains as you cut back on unnecessary spending? Would it be lattes and espresso, transportation costs, cars, designer clothing, or not designer clothing? Which one? Okay. All right. You guys are doing pretty good. 63% got it right. It's transportation. These other areas, people say, oh, well, if you really want to get wealthy, if you really want to do well in life, you need to cut back on coffee, stop drinking lattes. Now, at a certain level of income, that may be the case. But the fact of the matter is that transportation costs come in as number 2 when it comes to our spending in general. So that's a great place to begin looking. So again, to go to the idea of becoming the CEO of You Inc., that would have you driving yourself toward becoming an owner of capital. I just wanted to define capitalism here, which is, according to Merriam-Webster, a political system in which private individuals own capital goods. That means people who make cars, movies, provide services of labor like maid services, those are considered to be capital goods. You provide capital goods in the form of your life energy. And generally speaking, unless you're an entrepreneur already, you're trading your life energy for money so that somebody who owns the capital goods can continue to make more profit. We want to turn that on its head and make you the owner of the capital goods. People that own capital goods are able to deploy those goods to create more wealth. Like I made a documentary that I tried to sell. Actually, we didn't make a ton of money, but we got by okay. But in making television shows, like I was selling TV shows, and that would make my corporation lots and lots of money. It didn't really necessarily make me lots of money, but I was paid a decent salary to do it. But the point is that I was just trading my energy for that paycheck. I want to try to get you to think a little less about, or I want you to think more about that trade-off. What is it when you're just trading your life's energy for a paycheck? That's kind of a no-win game. You're there, you can get really stuck in that unless you're careful. And we can talk about in future sessions about how to create those capital goods for yourself. But just as a mindset exercise, think of that. Ultimately, our goal is to increase the ownership of capital in our own lives. For an individual, that generally looks like investing in stocks or real estate, investing in entrepreneurship, creating a business for yourself, or also investing in education, which can allow you to, advance in your career and make more money. What do you reckon among these things as a poll are the best way for a person to build wealth? Would you say it's to start a business? Would you say it's to increase your savings rate? Or would it be buying lottery tickets? And I'll just say as a cheat that until I turned 40, I think lottery tickets were my solution for this question. And I never won. Interesting. Okay, 96% of you said increase your savings rate. This was a little bit of a trick question because actually starting a business and increasing your savings rate are both equally good ways to build wealth. In fact, most people who become extremely wealthy start their own business. Think of Elon Musk, like at the very top. But that's one of the quickest ways to build wealth, and a lot of wealth, like to get into like the tens of millions of dollars. However, increasing your savings rate, I have seen, and I know many people who've done this, have become millionaires just by increasing their savings rate across their working careers. Lottery tickets, 0% of you said that that was a good way to create wealth, that's good. That makes me happy that that you figured that out. In fact, most lottery winners end up going broke. So just to sum this up, if you're functioning merely as a consumer in your life, all of your energy is being spent feeding the pockets of the people who provide capital goods. I'm going to say that again. If you're just operating as a consumer, all of your life's energy is being used to feed the pockets of other people who provide capital goods. Today, I want you to make a commitment to yourself to start taking some of that precious life energy and direct it toward you, Inc., the director, the CEO of your own company. So how do you become a CEO? Well, first of all, you have to define your values and move your money in service of that, whether that's your family or continuing education, jujitsu. What you value matters most. You need to avoid debt like the plague. You need to rein in the big three expenses, which I'll get to in a moment. And if you're in a position where you've gotten to that point where you're debt-free, you're making enough money to pay for your essentials, and you have a little bit left over, you need to start thinking about investing a fixed portion of that into one of the goods that we talked about, real estate, and so on. What do you value in life? This is going to be the guiding principle. This is going to be the way that you're going to begin to understand how to deploy your money. If you make a commitment to deploy your money only toward the things that you really value in your life, you're going to begin making great strides right away. I was talking to Sam earlier, and we were talking about, the latest fashion. And, if you go into a store and like they have the new sweater of the season out or whatever, in the moment you might think, oh, I really value that. I really need that. But what's really happening is you're wanting it. You're wanting it because you've been sort of programmed, like we all have in this culture, to just want whatever the providers of goods puts in front of us. But the truth of the matter is that things like meaningful experiences, time with family, building your own health, these things are actually of much greater value than the latest gadget, and they bring you much more satisfaction in your life. So if you haven't already, make a list of the things that you value. Write down the top 3 things. Next, I want you to think about getting out of debt for good, for the rest of your life, actually, wherever possible. You need to know how much interest you're paying if you have high debt credit cards. A lot of them are charging like upwards of 30% interest, which is insane and very difficult to get out from under. If you counter that with a positive 8% return generally in the stock market, you see where like the bank's getting the bulk of the deal here. Commit to not using credit cards for non-essential purposes. If you do have a lot of credit card debt, I would encourage you to go look at Dave Ramsey's website. He has something called the Debt Snowball, which is a really great way. That's how I got out of credit card debt. It's a way that we can discuss in later seminars to bring your debt down to a reasonable size. And I did just add this thing about should you pay down your debt first or invest? And generally speaking, the short answer on that is if your debt has more than like 5% interest, you should pay it down. So that's everything except for maybe student loans and mortgages. The big 3 expenses in our lives are transportation, housing, and food. While again, limiting your daily latte can be helpful, if you can get these 3 things under control, which is to say, don't buy the latest new car every year, don't finance cars, don't have more house than you can really afford, and don't go crazy on food, especially like eating out, which is an area that you can cut back on real easily for the most part. If you get these things under control, you can really make very great strides toward increasing your financial well-being. Again, we can talk more in depth about how to do that. So last, I just want to like leave a few practices for you to consider as you're going forward. First of all, if you are in debt, measure it, know exactly how much debt you have, and make a commitment to get out from under it for the rest of your life. Figure out a way, go to daveramsey.com or some other resources and make that happen. Try to make a list of 3 to 5 things that you value. Is it time with family? Is it experiences, travel? Like, what do you really value? Because that's going to be the guiding principle that will help you understand how to use your money in the best way. If you're somebody who likes to buy things on impulse, this is a great thing. It's called the 72-hour rule. It's not a way to punish you for wanting to buy, the next iPhone or something, but every time you have the impulse to buy something for the next 6 months, wait for 3 days, wait for 72 hours. And if at the end of 72 hours, you still want that thing really, really badly, you still have to have it, then it's okay, get it, as long as you're not going into debt in order to do it. Chances are you'll find that a lot of these things that are on impulse, you're not going to want them after 3 days. And last, if you are earning more than you spend, learn how to invest in it as soon as you can. Again, in a later seminar, we'll take a look at early investing practices and how to build your way toward financial independence, if that's what you want. All right, that's it for this little primer. Thank you. You are on the way. There's a lot of hope here. I think we can probably take some questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Travis. I really like the idea of being the CEO of my money and my life as a social worker. I think a lot about empowering ourselves to take control, and it can be so tricky with money to know where to start. So this is a good way to get some of us started. We've had some good questions come in. One question is asking, how do you know your values? So I guess, could you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, figuring out your values is an important, it's kind of like you have to do some soul searching to begin with. If you don't automatically know your values, I mean, some of us are given values straight out of the gate by our parents, work hard or whatever. And some of those values aren't even necessarily good values. Right. What I try to do is take something like my pets, and I look at them and I think to myself, okay, do I really value having pets? And of course, that warm, fuzzy feeling of loving my dog comes to my heart, and it's there every single time I look at my pet. If you go back to the example of the latest fashion trend, the sweater that you bought last spring, in the moment you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, I really value this. Like I would really like, really like, but probably by the fall, when the new fashion trend has expired, you look at that sweater and you're like, I never even wanted that in the first place. So there's usually an emotional quality that comes along with the things that we value. Health, for instance, we can all feel that in our bodies. Like, when you've got a cold or you've had a health problem, that it's an icky place to be and you want to get away from it. But when you are in good health and you think to yourself, do I value my health? Oh yeah, heck yeah. I can feel that in my chest, and that's the way I like to think about it.
That's really helpful. We've got another one here. And just to remind everyone, anyone who has any questions, there's a Q&A box at the bottom. There's an option to even tick it so it doesn't show your name if you want to ask an anonymous question. What are some tools and strategies for increasing savings rate while still paying for necessary expenses?
That's a great question. So the first line of reasoning here is to, again, create that list of values for yourself. So obviously you have your general expenses. You've got your rent or your mortgage, you've got your transportation costs, and so on. After that, you have something called disposable income, right? So this is the little buffer zone in between what you need and what you can have. And it's in that zone that you want to measure your values. And you want to go, the best way to do it is to really like create a budget, go like track your expenses for 3 months, write down every single thing that you buy and every single dollar that you earn. And then go through at the end of 3 months and look at all of these things that you bought after you've done your values exercise and say, okay, is all the whatever dining out that I did over the past 3 months, is that in line with my values? Now, it might be because maybe every time you went out with your best friend, and it's the thing that makes your life rich because you're with somebody that you love. So that's okay. But maybe you just kept going out to Chipotle because you were too lazy to go home and like make some food, in a cheaper way or whatever. And then you can start to begin to see like where you can make the cuts and the edits in your life.
Okay.
I think that's probably the first best way to go.
Okay. That's a good one. It really helps to think about aligning my values with where I spend my money then, for both figuring out a savings and figuring out how to spend the extra money that I have.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's hard is that like, we don't want to create a sense of, miserliness in our lives. I mean, sometimes it's hard because you feel like you're not getting ahead, but at the same time, you feel like that your life kind of is on not going great, and you feel like that you need a reward for all the effort that you're putting in. And that's a very natural feeling to have. Unfortunately, many of the times when we go for those quick rewards, we're actually doing ourselves more harm than good. It's kind of like dieting, which I hate to equate money to dieting because it isn't exactly like that. But if you eat half of a pint of ice cream, that it wasn't the most nutritious thing for you to do on a given day. It made you feel good for a minute, but at the end of the day, you can't keep it up.
Right. That makes sense. We have a pretty specific question, so I don't know if you have time for it today, and if not, maybe you could just speak to like maybe a pointer for this one, like where to go. They're asking, with the volatility of the stock market, should I move my 401k to a less aggressive / safer investment versus paying for managed investments? I'm in my mid-50s with about 390k in my 401k. So I don't know if that is, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I can't answer that. So sorry. So it's a 401k mid-50s, and he or she is paying an advisory fee.
No, they're just asking if they should move it to a less aggressive, safer investment versus paying for managed investments.
I see. Okay. So that's a pretty complicated question that we can definitely dive into in a different seminar. But what I will say is this: volatility in the stock market is to be expected. It's part of being an investor. If you look at the long-term version of the stock market chart, if you look over 50 years, it goes like this, like this, like this, like this, but it always goes up. As long as there are productive people on the planet, opening businesses and creating goods for the economy, that should continue to go up. The more important question is, what is your risk tolerance? If you're in your mid-50s and you have a lot of stock exposure, that might not be the right way to go. You might want to have a lower stock to bond ratio. But I wouldn't encourage you to start selling things now, because the good news is that most recessions end in about 18 months. It's better just to wait it out for a couple of years. You do have time being in your mid-50s. Let the market come back to recovery. It could take a year or two for that to happen, but just leave it alone for now. And once the market comes back, that might be a moment where you're going to want to try to take a look at your appetite for risk and maybe make some adjustments there.
Great. Thank you, Travis. That was great.
Sure.
Looks like we're just about at time. So if you have a few last words you want to leave us with, we do have you scheduled again in November. So, we're excited to have you come back and hopefully, answer more questions and maybe dive into a little bit more of some of the topics that we discussed.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, this really is a passion for me. I care very much about educating people about finances because, as I explained at the top, I didn't get the education. And I think back to if I had known a lot of these things when I was in my 20s or 30s, my life would have been a lot easier. The
Right.
fact of the matter is that every 10 years that you wait to save and invest, you have to invest and save double the amount to get to the same place due to something called compound interest, which we can go over in greater depth. But
Right.
I think we're going to send out a poll after this, and I would like for the people here to please respond to that and include anything that you're really interested in knowing about. I don't know what the different levels of experience and interest are here, so that'll help us shape these seminars to be the most useful.
Thanks. Yep, that's right. Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us. There's a 2-question survey for you all to answer. And like Travis said, we're using that material to create this program. This program is for you, our industry community, and we want to hear from you. So thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Travis, for all that wonderful information. And we will see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.